Good day to you from Galactic on this 6th day of August in 2026. Up here in the corner, you'll see a brief outline of the topics we need to cover now. You've tuned into a station that is devoted to science, actually to rational logic, which goes further than just what we would call science. It applies to all aspects of life. So rational logic is what we're all about here. And what does that do for us? This is a geometry station, which is a branch of logic, really, similar to mathematics. Geometry is the study of shapes, you could just put it simply. Now, what we have in this outline is where this institute, this small institution of one in Chico, California, what I'm doing. Why am I presenting to you? 4 years ago, actually 4.5 years ago, I discovered a new geometry. And this has been validated, although I have to warn you that it has not passed peer review yet. So you're simply getting a theory, which is how you must regard it. As a reasonable scientist, you can't just believe me because I sound believable. Did I discover a new geometry? Well, it turns out that it has applications. That geometry, as we were taught it in school, is the study of lines, but actually what I discovered is the other form of geometry, which begins with an axiomatization of the plane using nonlinear geometry, specifically the circle. The circle is a very interesting planar object, and the line also is a planar object. Now, lines make such structures as triangles and squares, but the circle really doesn't make anything except bigger circles and smaller circles. So it is an adequate representation of planar space in one dimension, considering the plane to be one dimension instead of two dimensions. The two-dimensional approach to the plane is physiologically natural to us. So that's the reason for Euclid, in a nutshell, just making a direct correlation between biology and the representational system of the human being, sometimes called consciousness. Here it would most likely be called mind, but it is a projective system by which we assimilate the information we receive from the universe, generally conceded to be primarily through the senses, since it's hard to visualize how we would receive information from the universe without the use of our senses. Currently, in science, there are two sources of information for physics. One of those is light. And light, you could say, comprises the universe. It certainly is a big part of the universe, if not the entirety, because light is, of course, pure energy. It may or may not have a particle form. That is currently being discussed and has been for a century. Whether light can be considered to be particles. The answer to that is yes, but it's a strange answer. So light is not what is traditionally called a particle. That is a new concept in the 20th century, that light might be considered a particle, namely the photon. The standard particle from the time of the Greeks, tracing back to Lucretius and Democritus, there must be a smallest building block of matter. So that's not talking about energy, it's talking about matter. The dividing line between the two has become somewhat obscure, but we're not talking about the obscurities here and now. We're talking about what we actually do know, which is quite profound. The nature of light is, of course, the cutting edge of science at all times. If we could understand light completely, we would probably understand the universe. However, there is another aspect to the universe by which we are able to analyze the universe from another source that is not light. It's called gravity. And gravity may or may not be considered to be a force, that actually divides physicists right down the middle to the present day, that nobody can state clearly or absolutely, really either coherently or completely, whether gravity is a force or not. Now, you may already have an opinion on that, but it must be considered an opinion. No matter how certain you are of your point of view, you must, as a scientist, recognize the opposite point of view when it comes to gravity being a force. Force is a most interesting concept to consider. But there you have it, our two sources of information about the universe, physically. Physics. The physical universe is analyzable by rational logic using two sources of information, one of which is simply gravity. And the reason that that is such a powerful concept is because gravity can mathematically describe the orbits of planets around a star. That's putting a lot into a nutshell. Closer to home, you could say, closer to home base Earth here, we are able to use geometry and mathematics in conjunction with a perception of gravity such that we can describe accurately the orbit of the moon around the Earth. And that is our closest cosmic companion, as you are well aware. There's nothing between us and the moon. And there's nothing beyond the moon until you get to some of the other occupants of the solar system. So that's where we are, out to a present level of conceptualization. We exist on the surface of a spherical planet. We are orbited by a moon, and we ourselves, as a unit, a gravitationally bound unit, the Earth lunar system, that revolves around the sun. That is, it orbits the sun on a yearly cycle as we measure that circuit. So we're talking about cycles when we're talking about our immediate perception of heaven. This is the traditional word which always, of course, gets a smile from us scientists, although in your own mind you may interpret heaven as you will. We simply mean that as the physicality of what is beyond the Earth, beginning at the atmosphere, which in certain systems of hierarchical classification and organization, that is considered to be the lowest level of heaven. Well, you certainly might say so, since we cannot fly like birds, which brings in our conception of gravity again. We can fly through the air, we've learned how to do that. But we don't fly like birds, we can't just flap our wings. They have airfoils built into their wings by design, so birds are able to fly. So may insects. And certain kinds of squirrels, although they can't fly, they can certainly glide a long ways, giving rise to the name the flying squirrel. One of whom, Rocket J. Squirrel, was one of my childhood companions through the miracle of television. Rocket J. Squirrel and Bullwinkle Moose were spies, and they dealt with the KGB and the CIA. They dealt with Mr. Big. Was not at that time explicitly in Jerusalem or Manhattan, but that's what it turned out to be. That's Mr. Big. So we have quite a world situation in which we're doing rational logic applied to the physical universe, which we generally call science, but in this case, it's the science of physics. Now, my formal paper, which I am documenting, this is part of that documentation. I have several outlines prepared for this formal paper, which will simply present spherical geometry, which is quite an interesting system that I discovered. Or I should perhaps say more humbly, I believe that I've discovered. It certainly has been of benefit to me, but in order to be science, it must be of benefit to somebody else. somebody else, at the very least, has to review my work to see if it passes peer review, which is quite an interesting process, and it is subject to the usual vicissitudes of human fallibility, such that perhaps a valid discovery can be shot down illegitimately, with or without good purpose, or conversely, a rotten theory can rise to the top, as we've seen happen over the past 100 years, certainly. Most of the dominant models in physics are quite suspect, going from the cosmological model, whereby the universe is said to be expanding. I contradict that. That is not true. I've proved otherwise. It's actually rotating. Although that, of course, you would want to know the proof for that. Well, that's the reason for the formal paper, which automatically divides into the two natural provinces of science, one of which is theory, which simply means your database. It doesn't mean that it's suspect or in some way wrong. What it means is this is what you think you know, but everything that you think you know has to be based on what you actually know. So there's quite an interesting hierarchy of what we're certain of and what we're relatively certain of. This would be necessary for a finite, fallible creature, such as a human is, who is attempting to analyze a perfectly logical and rational universe, as we have indeed discovered it to be. So the universe is coherent. It is logical, and it is subject to logic. And the rational logical system with which we're endowed by DNA, by design, enables us to use a rational logical system to match that with a rational logical system that's already here without humans. So we're attempting to correlate our own rational logical system with that already exists. So this system we see all around us, both on earth and in heaven, in other words, what we are familiar with on our planet all around us, a rather huge globe from our limited perspective. It's quite a wild, wonderful world, filled with about 1.5 million species and all kinds of elements, about 92, well, actually exactly 92 natural elements. We have earth, air, fire, and water. We have all kinds of stuff to look at and consider. The biosphere, the ecology, is a source of endless delight and wonder to us, immensely complex. Each creature is a cellular organism, excluding the nasty virus, which we don't know much about and don't like. The viruses are much tinier than cells, but that is a lacuna, that is a black eye in the otherwise coherent system of cellular biology, which describes all life, except for the virus. So that's putting a lot in a nutshell. That's science in a nutshell. That's where we're at. We're on Earth. We are studying heaven, using the light of heaven to discern that there are stars. Indeed, we can see the moon by reflected light, and we see things much bigger than stars, called galaxies, which were just discovered. That is proved to be outside this star system, which is indeed another galaxy. And we've gone further than that. In the 1950s, we discovered that all galaxies are in clusters. From about 300 to 1,000 galaxies is the average size of the building block of the universe at macro scale, the galaxy cluster. These are separated by empty space, as we're forced to put it, and they fill the universe. But they're not the only things that fill the universe. The universe is filled with galaxy clusters, which are composed of galaxies, which are composed of stars. But we're only referring to luminous objects, of which the star is the most obvious example. Can you think of another example of a luminous object at macroscale, that is perhaps the size of a star or larger, that is luminous? I don't know if you've heard anything about that. You may not know the answer. Or you may, and you're chafing at the bit for me to get to the point. There is one other luminous object in the universe, besides the star, There are many kinds of stars, but they have a very limited range of size as scale goes. The sun is a typical star. It's not very big and it's not very small. You may have heard of supergiants. These, either well named or not, we have very large blue stars, and they are blue. They have a predominantly blue spectrum. There are red giants. There are blue supergiants. Most stars are smaller than that. They're about the size of the sun. They're mostly yellow. This is part of the famous sequence which was worked out over a period of decades in the 20th century, and indeed before. We have many kinds of stars, but they're all stars. Now, the next largest unit is called an extended object. That's the galaxy. There are, however, smaller organizations of stars which are apparently gravitationally bound. These are called star clusters. And there are several types of star clusters. There are also binary stars, stars that revolve around a common center of gravity. There are trinary stars, and if you wanted to look into that, there are also quaternary stars, and it is believed, I believe this has been discovered, there are 5-star systems as well, which is quite an interesting problem in mathematical geometry. The three-body problem is a notorious unsolved problem in geometry to describe, somehow predict, the course of 3 gravitationally bound bodies, called a three-body system. Very difficult to analyze. So we're always pushing the limits, we're always pushing the envelope, we're looking further and further out. Now, the other luminous object besides the star was discovered in the 20th century, approximately the 1960s. An object was discovered called the quasar. The quasar. This has since been analyzed for decades using more and more sophisticated instrumentation. The quasar is a galaxy-sized object. It's not at the stellar scale, it's at the galactic scale. But you do need to say more. And this took a long time to work out. And it was divisive. It was actually somewhat crisis-oriented, as 2 theoretical models came into clash. Basically, the Big Bang model, on which everything is predicated now, according to that disproved model. So we're operating under a false model that has since been discerned, but now it's too late. It's very strange to say this, but in science, at the present level of sophistication, that is its organizational level, the number of entities beyond that of just humans, we're talking about institutions with financial support, they tend to establish a model which then cannot be dethroned, which is anti-scientific. That's where we're at. So we do have a cosmological model that's false. And I've proved it false, but I'm not the only one who's attempted to get at the bottom of this, because that's the cutting edge. How do we actually describe the universe at the largest scale? Nobody knows yet. That's a completely unanswered question. That must be fully admitted. That's, of course, an open invitation for someone to say that they do know, and therefore you must listen to them. And that becomes a hegemonic model, or hegemonic is usually given a soft G, although in Greek there is no soft G. It's hegemony. And you may have heard this term in political circles. It's quite a popular term, basically for a ruthless government. So that's just what hegemony means. Basically means dictatorship, but it goes way beyond that. It could be a communist dictatorship of a group. It really describes any government, is a hegemon, a word that I just learned recently on the Glenn Deason show, to which we'll turn in a moment. But that's not science. That's rather the application of rational logic to the world situation in which we're forced to exist as humans. That goes to the irrational side of life, because governments are irrational things. They don't belong to the human system. Governments are extremely unnatural. And that's obvious, but it's very difficult to state that it's obvious in a way that's helpful because we have to live in this world. So we have to deal with these irrationalities. There's simply no way out. I mean, you can't divorce yourself from life. Well, that would be ridiculous anyway, because the purpose of science is to serve life. Or what purpose could it possibly have? Well, that actually is a very interesting question. What if science is not actually in the service of humanity? Well, that would be a ridiculous thing to say because it's the greatest miracle that we know of in the human realm is science. Because it leads to technological innovations. I don't even need to cite electricity, the harnessing of that form of energy, which gives us electric lighting, it gives us engines, it gives us computers. So the taming of electricity is a major event in human history. That's the result of science being used for technology. Well, that's also used for weaponry. And of course, that's just such a sad thing to say, quite depressing, and really unwelcome. We as scientists, in a way, are cordoned off because we deal with a side of life that, at least theoretically, at least abstractly, is pure good. It's the best thing we've ever known. Is that true? No, because humans are not, strictly speaking, governed by logic. We're governed by emotion. And this is to bring up, of course, a deeply philosophical issue that can no longer be avoided. Traditionally, and I subscribe to this tradition, although I'm going to violate it, we want to keep emotion out of science because it interferes with the logic. If you're emotionally swayed, you're biased, you're prejudiced. That's all there is to it. If you're incentivized by money, you can't possibly claim to be unbiased. Because whoever's paying you, you're going to go along with that. And that's actually a form of coercion, which you may or may not think applies in any one case, or you're uncertain, and it's just nebulous, and it's distracting from what science purports to do, which is to be precise, to actually know things. And this has proved to be so good that we don't want to ruin it. And that's when we come to some very disturbing developments, basically in politics and just the way the world is, eternal warfare and injustice, etc., etc. But then you have science, which just does nothing but give us good things. And it seems antiseptic. You simply disregard the fact that governments get hold of all the information that the good guys discover, and they use it to develop just the most evil things possible. Going into outer space is wonderful. We get the Hubble telescope, the James Webb telescope. We get to learn a lot more about the planets around us, for instance, Mars. I mean, all of this, it can only be said to be wonderful. It's exactly why we love science, certainly in one aspect. So then it's really just quite disturbing to discover that science may not actually be what we thought it was. It seems to be under some form of possession. Now, the same thing can be said of the human race, that the human race is obviously good. We generally just instinctively like each other. We raise our young to be healthy. We introduce them to other humans. We as children are just fascinated with other humans of all kinds. We want to know more and more people. We're happy. We farm, we trade, we have fun, we learn about alcohol, we use drugs. We just have a good time. We're always partying. We have barbecues, we have get-togethers. We go on expeditions, we laugh. We marry each other's daughters and sons. Maybe there's a little room for deviancy. Hey, he's a little bit, and then you try to use a polite word for, and it's all part of the whole game. There's a lot of lightheartedness, a lot of forgiveness, a lot of understanding. You accidentally killed one of our workers. Hey, you know what? We're going to miss him. There's a lot of tears. A lot of the brothers want you dead. It's a wonder they haven't found you and slit your throat already. But if you run, you can get to a city of refuge, and we'll bring everybody together so that the brothers will not kill you, although they might anyway. They might find a way to murder you in your cell, but we'll try to get you a fair trial. We try to do things well, making up for our deficiencies. Oh, did you put out Johnny's eye? Well, it was an accident, honey. I know you're sorry. The whole family wants you dead. Their family wants to kill every single member of our family because you stabbed the eye out of one of your playmates, but it was an accident, and we're going to keep you at home here until those kids who are threatening to kill you outside our front door are brought to justice by the police to get them away from our house, because you didn't mean to stab Johnny's eye out with that pair of scissors or whatever you were doing wrong. And no, they're not going to kill you. They're not going to hang you upside down and beat you to death. Honey, just stop crying. Stop screaming. Stop screaming before I belt you across the room with this sledgehammer, you little brat. This is the third kid whose eye you have put out in that school, and they're getting sick of you. Maybe your father and I shouldn't have done so many drugs and just let you watch those goddamn videos. And now you're a murderer, and they're going to get you, but we're going to try to protect you. We try to do things right. But it's difficult. There's stuff in the Bible about accidentally killing one of your co-workers. You were swinging a big sledgehammer for whatever reason, and you didn't see Hank coming up behind you. You took a big swing. He just cranked him right in the temple, and he fell down dead. And now someone looks and goes, "Oh my God." And now the word gets out, and the brothers of that dead man want to kill you. They want you dead, and then ask questions. And you better run for the city of refuge. It just goes on and on and on. We make mistakes. You accidentally kill your own infant. You leave the kid who can't move. It's just bundled up. You got it wrapped in cotton. It's 100 degrees. And you lock the kid in the car for a half an hour with the windows up, with the puppy. And nobody hears the crying, the frantic dog, because you're in a remote part of the parking lot where the sun is just beating down. It goes up to 130 degrees. The oxygen runs out. You come back with the groceries for dinner, and there's a dead baby and a dead puppy. Now what do? These things happen. And the list is endless of little mishaps that end up in death or maiming. Just something that just is irreversible. It's horrendous. You ruined that person's life, but it was an accident. Well, you're going to have to prove that. Because when somebody is dead or lost an arm or, is debilitated for the rest of their lives because of you, well, you can't be completely innocent, even though in the eyes of heaven, you meant no harm. That's not how the family of the dead kid is going to think about you. They're going to want you beaten until you're dead. Preferably torture you first. And these are just ordinary people who yesterday you were having a barbecue, you were swimming, everybody was happy. But today there's a vendetta that's just going to go on for generations. It's going to turn into an internecine war. You're going to have trouble with your neighbors in other countries because now you're warlike. And this is the beginning of humanity and how it's been to the present day. Just runaway escalation. Where now, the neighboring tribes, they stole some of our horses. And Bobby, who was guarding the horses, they killed him so they could get away with the horses without being detected. Well, now we have to conduct a raid. First of all, to get back the horses, but then to kill about 20 or 30 of those bastards and maybe take some of their stuff too. And this goes on for centuries. And you know, there's some neighboring tribe, you know, to the north, south, east, or west that is totally peaceful. You know, they're devoted to the service of God and heaven and truth. You know, they forgive anything. And here comes this warlike nation. It's like, God damn it. We have got to find more resources to beat the shit out of our neighbors to the south. Well, these cats to the north, they're all peaceful. They're pushovers. Let's go in there and just take whatever they have and enslave them. And then we'll be able to beat those bastards to the south. Well, I think you understand that this describes about 6,000 years of human history in all corners of the world, with no exceptions. There has never been peace on this earth. We don't get along, even though we do. We do, but we don't. Well, that's irrational. How did this begin? Well, that's the question that needs to be answered at the human level. Is that what science does? No. But it is what rational logic is for. You're supposed to be able to figure it out. Well, what if you just can't? Well, you have to. You have to figure it out or you'll lose your mind. Let's say you have a beautiful wife. And one day, you know, the neighboring, I don't know, apartment, your nearest tribe, they just spot her and she's alone and they rape her to death and get away with it and she's found dead. And then you find out and that's your wife. She's dead. She was raped to death. This has happened millions of times, by the way. That is not an unusual situation at all. And now it's your turn to react as a rational man. Well, I don't think you're going to be able to do that. No matter how peaceful you were, no matter what your belief in Allah or God or the Lord or Jesus or Muhammad or the Buddha or someone of your choice, no matter what you believe in, it's out the window now. There's no more morality now. What did you do to my wife? You may be in such grief that you actually kill yourself. That has happened innumerable times. You find your baby dead. You find your husband dead. You find your family dead. You kill yourself. That's rational from the point of view of logic, of the emotions. You can't handle it anymore. You're done. You just lost your mind. You know you're dangerous. You're going to kill them all if you even sight them. You won't ask any questions first. You're going to beat them to death. You want to torture them to death. You lose your fucking mind. And that's normal. We're all taught this in school. You're supposed to forgive, but sometimes you can't. And then you go to war, your life is ruined, and you ruin life all around you, and that's the way it's going to be. And that's why we have nations. That's why we have governments, is to continue the horror. So this is just a banging dungeon of cannibals. And that's where you were born. Welcome to Earth. But then there's also the cycles of heaven, the beautiful sun and moon, the beautiful swans and birds of the air that sing. They're the fish that feed us. You know, they're all kinds of four-legged creatures that are just adorable. You know, the animals love us. If they trust us, we can get them to trust us. They'll serve us willingly. They give us their meat. We learn about God. We learn about angels. There's just glory, glory, glory ahead. All praise goes to God. Everything is marvy. How can both of these situations exist? Is this hell or is it heaven? And that's the human problem. So who cares about my formal paper? I'm forced to ask myself this now, because I'm a student of life. I don't care about science. I find it fascinating, but that's not why I'm on this planet. The reason I'm on this planet is to be a human. Which means what? It means what I just told you. So I'm not exempt from this. A scientist cannot exempt himself from reality. And reality is unthinkably irrational. It is insane. So are we all insane? Are we necessarily insane? Perhaps. You certainly could make a strong case for that. Richard Dawkins does. Richard Dawkins made his living, he made millions of dollars off of white people who are too stupid to do anything else except listen to Richard Dawkins, who hates God. He's an atheist. He doesn't like people who believe in God. He thinks that they're retarded. He says so. He's vociferous. He's angry. He just doesn't like religion. He just thinks that that's what's hurting everybody, because God is evil. God is something you made up, and there's no such thing. And you must be an atheist, or you can't be a scientist. And he claims to be rationally logical. He certainly can make that case. It doesn't look like there's a God if you're just looking at a field of dead babies and dead women. The Israelis go into another town in Gaza. They find the cripples first and kill them, making sure that the other Palestinians see we're killing your helpless people first, so that you know that you're being genocidally extinguished. Maximum amount of pain, maximum amount of agony, maximum amount of inhumanity of man to man. So are those Israelis human? You can't say so. Of course not. And yet, if you check War Through the Ages, a book which I read at the age of 13, it's every page of history. Are babies being murdered, women being murdered, men being just slaughtered wholesale? The finest of the fine get the intellectuals first, get anybody who has wisdom, kill them off first because of the major threat to our hegemony. They're enemies of the empire. They're enemies of the state. They have to be tortured and killed. They have to be cowed. And that's the world you were born into. It's after you. It's going to slit your throat. The very first chance it gets, you're next. You're going off to the gulag. You're going to prison. You're going to be captured. You're going to be dragged away in the night with a bag over your head. You're going to be beaten. Unthinkable things will be done to you and all of your friends. And this is just normal life. It's going on next door. It's all over the earth. It never stops. It never has stopped. And we're studying the universe. Really. Why? Why are we studying light? Why do logic, mathematics? Because it serves Satan. That's the reason. That's the whole reason for science and technology. It's not to help humans. It doesn't help humans. It doesn't help humans. Your car is worthless. The jets that are flying through the sky are worthless. The supercarriers are worthless. The rockets going to the moon and Mars. This is just shit. It doesn't do anything to solve the real problem. Is it soluble? You've been brainwashed to think that it's insoluble. It's either that or you just turn homo, you become a pansy, you lose your spine, you join the Mormons. You join the Mormons. Just using their name as a typical example of a stupid church, where you're protected by the love of Jesus. You don't have to face reality. All you need to do is read the words of Joseph Smith, the false prophet, or you join the Seventh-day Adventists, which I did. I mean, that can actually be proved. I'm not really proud of that, but I was young. And I meant no harm, but I was involved in an organization that has a false prophetess. And that's all they are about, is their false prophetess. They couldn't care less about Jesus or God. They care about their religion because it protects them from reality. They no longer have to face reality. But of course you have to say something, or the children are going to ask you, what does our religion teach us about, evil? And they're going to make something up. And I happen to know from the inside What the Seventh-day Adventists have is their protective veil that just artificially protects them from reality. How do they describe world politics? Well, the United States is Satan. That's what they say. Ellen G. White, their false prophetess, wrote a book called The Great Controversy. And the Great Controversy has one thing to say. The United States is Satan. The United States is Satan. Is that true? I happen to be the foremost expert on that topic in the world, and I could say something. But it's not going to convince you, and so there's no point in me saying it. All of which is to say that science is not helping. So why do I have a science station? I believe that that's a reasonable question that you must ask, or why are you watching this station? What do you think I'm going to tell you that's of importance to you? This is not an entertainment station. I'm not here to distract you with stuff that you like. I'm not here to play you your favorite music, so to speak. I am not here to give you pleasure. I am here to give you the truth. Well, you don't want it. And I know you don't. Because it's not just, you turn pansy and run to the Mormons, so to speak. You can't face reality. You have no solutions. You can't teach the youth. You can't teach the next generation. You're worthless. You've been crushed. Well, you still have to live. How? How do you intend to still be a rational man? Well, you pretend. Oh, I'm interested in quantum mechanics, so I'm a big man with huge testicles. That's all it is. It's just another veil over your eyes, so you won't answer the real questions because you can't. You can't face it. You're a coward. Am I? My friend, when you face death personally, you're a coward. Yes, you try to get away from death so you can be alive for at least a while longer. What if you're cornered? Well, there's something called fight or flight. Well, that's a physiological reaction to when you're cornered. They're going to get you. Well, the first thing is, can I get away? But if you can't, can I kill them first? Can I kill them before they kill me? What are you going to do? You can't do either one. Neither one is available to you. You can't kill them first because you don't kill. And you can't run away because they won't let you. In other words, they're forcing you to kill them. They're forcing you to fight. You're being coerced to fight. With no way out. Unless you turn pansy. You just change your identity. That's really the whole reason for this new identity movement. It's not just sexual. It has to do with who you think you are as a human. How do you carry on from day to day? You're going to wake up into the same world of babies just being massacred, of women being raped to death, of injustice on a scale that no rational man can cope with. And that's your new day. Oh, jolly. The birdies are singing again. Let's go out to where they're killing each other in the streets. It's somewhere in the world. It's your world. Well, you just say, no, it's not. I got mine, mate. I'm studying quantum mechanics. I know a lot about some subject in science. It's just like your favorite Beatle. Oh, I've got John Lennon. I don't need the rest of the world. Or I have Karl Marx. Or I have some face, some giant, some name, some movement, some politics, some religion, some form of identity that lets me carry on as an absolute hypocrite. I just pretend to be rational, but I can't use my mind to solve the simplest problem. And so I pretend. We all do. You can't achieve maturity. You won't even get to puberty unless you learn to lie. You have to lie to yourself. And eventually you're going to lie to others. That's your whole persona. You know, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a computer scientist. Well, have you answered the problem of life and death? You know, nobody talks that way. You ask someone, how are you? How's your puppy? Have you learned to French kiss your puppy yet? Look at your cute puppy. And just, you understand, people are screaming their lives out. They're being attacked by a ruthless enemy, and that enemy is coming for you next. You're already cornered and you know it. How do you face that? You already face the prospect of death. You're so afraid of that you can't face it, and you've already made up your mind. You're never going to face it, that you're going to die. You're a hypocrite. You can't think at all. You have no answers. Well, is that the right way to be? If survival of the fittest is true, yeah. If your life is meaningless ultimately, yes. You're here for a brief flash, and then you're gone. And that's it. There's no meaning. That's all you'll ever have. It doesn't make any difference what happens after you're dead. It doesn't make any difference that you're alive. You have a consciousness, it's worthless. It has no meaning. It doesn't fit. You're useless. You're worthless. It's a mistake. You're not real. That's what's being discussed at the highest levels of physics right now. That everything that we call reality is a projection. That it's a cybernetic projection of some huge, immoral computer. And the way things are is the way things are. That's it. Death, torture, injustice, murder, rape, theft. That's it. That's what you get. That's all there is. So what's rational logic for? It's to figure out that you're worthless, that you're stupid, that you'll never know anything. And whatever you know, it's going to be lost. That's why you have a rational intellect. That's why everything seems to make sense. Because of that. Well, that's hell. That's hell. So are you going to be reincarnated? It'll be the same thing. There's no future. There's no out. There's no win. There's no pie in the sky by and by. Richard Dawkins has proved that. There's no such thing as God. You just made that up because you're scared. So you're innately superstitious, and that's the whole meaning of reality. That you're an idiot. And so someone is going to come along, some large entity, like the Nazi movement, or the communist movement, or the democratic liberal movement, or the Republican movement, or some movement to oust the government, or some movement to give humans more freedoms or more luxuries. You're going to join a movement. You're going to join a religion, a political organization. You're going to join some scientific community where you just wear pinafores and play with yourself. You're just going to be whatever you're going to be that's equally worthless. But then there are super entities that are much more powerful than any human. And they have their own self-protective system, generally called a government, but that extends to a church. That's a form of government because it's larger than you. Well, you know what's larger than you? The universe. The universe is larger than you. Can you join that? That's the right question. That's the way out. Can you use rational logic to discover your place in the universe so that it answers all of your questions and all of your fears. Well, you know that the next thing I'm going to do, according to your experience, is once I've told you, I have the good news, or we are going to tell you the secret, the way out, the truth that sets you free. You know what comes right after that. Get out your wallet. Get your money out of your pocket, because this cost us something. We're bringing you the truth that sets you free. Pay us. And we don't even have to pay taxes, either because you're a political organization, or because you're a church, or because you're a university. And these are the three huge hegemons, certainly in Western society. But if you check back in history, this is universal. Absolutely universal. You have three super organizations that are not quite human. One of them is a government. That is a political organization that robs the people, demands taxes, and will kill you if you don't pay them. So that's extortion. That's a government. It produces nothing but evil, but also can pave your roads and maybe provide electrical lighting and sewage. So it's civilized, is it? So you know that that leads nowhere. That's temporary. What about religion? Well, let's skip that for now. What about science, the university? Well, really, that's your medicine man? That's your guru? That's your guide? It's Mohammed, it's Jesus, it's Buddha. And now you're safe because you're not facing reality. You can't. That's why you join a super organization. Because you have no identity, but it does. That's why you're a Nazi. That's why you're a Trump supporter. That's why you're out of your mind. Because it gives you safety. You no longer have to face the truth. You no longer have to face reality. You no longer have to face death. You don't have to face yourself. You don't have to think about God, unless that's your pastime. Like, maybe you play games. Well, you can also play a game called God. And that's up to you, but it's worthless. You have to do something to stay alive. You're trapped. There's no way out. You have to earn money. Well, only the government can give you money. Governments own money. People don't own money. People get loaned money so that the government gets 90%. All the money that you earn doing whatever you do, either in the factory or the office or on the farm, whatever you do, the government gets 90% of it and gives nothing back. It's just taken away from you and squandered. Actually, worse than squandered. It's used to build supercarriers. It's used to build missiles. Trillions of dollars of American money. It's not only flushed down a toilet, it's handed to Satan to destroy the world. That's what you're working for. How do you feel about yourself that you're contributing to the total domination of evil? Aren't you a servant of the devil? Aren't you a Satan worshiper? Well, nobody would say that. Nobody would even suggest that. That's ridiculous. That is what you're doing. It's just that you can't admit it. How can a human being go on to the next day without waking up and just slitting your wrists? Or you're not even going to go to sleep. You can't fake. You're done. Really, I'm serving Satan. End it. Just end it. The pain is too much. They killed my whole family. They just murdered everything. They took my farm. I have no way to live. End it. Kill yourself. Is that the right thing to do? That never is the right thing to do, but you may end up doing something worse. That is, you'll join. You'll pick up a gun. You'll become a thug. You'll get protection. You'll protect yourself at all costs because now you know how the game is played. You give up on morality, you give up on ethics, you give up on any hope of a future for yourself. You've enlisted because they cornered you, they got you. That's the American society. That's what's happening. You're being coerced by Satan to join his side. And there's no way out. You will join. You've already joined. You had no choice. You're evil. You're part of it. You're a ruiner. You are satanic. You are. And you just can't face that. Who could? What if that could be proved to your face, which I'm not trying to do? I'm giving you the existential situation that is irrational. Because the purpose of rational logic is to figure out any problem, to figure it out. So is there a basis for morality? Is there a reason for goodness? Were we meant to be good? Or are we permanently evil? You could take either side, and really that's what Glenn Deason and these other experts are trying to negotiate on behalf of a paying audience. Don't forget, these men get money. Every time you click subscribe and like, that's why they always tell you, subscribe, like, and give me money yourself. Subscribe gives me money from YouTube. Like gives me money from YouTube. And you yourself should send me money. It's money, money, money. Well, of course, because they know that this is just a game. And the game is to get the money. So they're pretending. They're pretending. Because that's what you and I want. I listen to Glenn Deason. Why do I listen to him when he's just explaining the global situation economically, politically, and militarily? Even going to culturally and socially, there are a lot of issues involved in these two wars that have broken out that can't be stopped. Well, how do you face that? Well, you study it so you pretend that it's not there. You become an expert on it. This is what I've chosen to do. I know what I could say that would give you the choices that you need so that you can rationalize the situation. But you see, you don't want that. And in fact, you've been so powerfully brainwashed that even if I did give you the right choices and then you chose the right orientation and it did set you free, I don't see how that can happen. So whatever I think that I know that you might benefit from, I'm afraid that's out of the question. It just is not simply the way the game is set up. Even if I knew the answer that you need, you have no way of accepting it. It just isn't part of the system for you to believe another man. Because every other human will lie to you. You already know that. Nobody tells the truth. Everybody is involved in the same game. And unless you get money, you lose. And that's it. There's nothing else. You get money until you die. Just money, 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 and then you die. And whatever happens, it doesn't matter. Because you need money to live, and to stay alive is the bottom line. There is no future. If you think there's a future, you're going to end up committing suicide. So there is no future. Richard Dawkins is right. There's no God. There's no God for you. And Richard Dawkins is encouraging you. That's good. You need to keep thinking that way. Get rid of any guidance. There are no gurus. There's no leader. There's no Christ. There's no God. There's no angels. There's no superstition. It's money, 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 and then you die. There's no future. There's no life after death. There's no rationality that means a tinker's dam. The universe is expanding. Who cares? You know, the quantum paradox is fascinating. It can't be solved. Who cares? You're getting older. You're turning gray. You're becoming progressively crippled. You're sick. You're unhappy. You see people, your friends are dying. This is going to happen to you if you're in your 30s. It's just an eye blink away and you're going to be 70. And then you're going to run out of time and it's all over. Well, what happened? you will never have any idea. That's what Richard Dawkins says. Don't believe in anything. There's nothing beyond your agony. There's nothing that's going to help you. There are no answers. And rational logic is for the purpose of convincing you that rational logic has no purpose. That's what rational logic teaches you. Satan. There's only one reality, evil. There's only one definition of the human race, sin. And therefore, whoever gets the most people together, the most money together, the largest military, the most powerful form of coercive control, whoever gets that wins the game for Satan and fuck God. That's what's going on earth. It's Satan's game, not God's. There is no other form of rationality except brutality. That's a quote. Can you name the source of that quote? There's only one form of rationality, and that's brutality. Brutality is the only source of success. It's the only answer. Is brutal behavior. Just kill anybody you don't like. And that's the earth. That's the world. That's humanity. Whoever is the most powerful, in order to exercise the most brutal form of murder, rape, torture, and death, whoever does that wins. That's Israel. That's Israel. They're the winners. They're winning for Satan. Satan has already won. Satan has everything in the bag. And what Glenn Deason is doing, nothing against Glenn. Really, it's his station. It's his office. What's it doing? It's filling in you and me on the play-by-play as Satan wins the game. And that's what all of these analysts say. And it terrifies them. It shows. Every last one of them say that this is irrational. It's psychopathic. The United States is encouraging Europe to attack Russia to the death. That can't be stopped. Meanwhile, the United States, with Israel, it's hard to say who's the leader here, but the United States and Israel are going to kill every last Iranian person until there's no more worship of God in this world. Islam is under attack, and it has already lost. Satan is just mopping up. It may take decades. It may take centuries. But that's the outcome. No more religion. Because the Israelis are under the control of Satan. And Satan cannot be stopped. He's been winning for 6,000 years without a loss. Except for Yeshua. Yeshua really was a wrench in Satan's works. And his name has been popularized ever since as the man from heaven who destroyed the works of Satan. Well, that's not something for you. You're too smart for that, because you know that you're going to be coerced into joining some pansy religion where they just worship Jesus, and they want your money. See, you're not going to fall for that. No gospel, no hope, forget Jesus. That's a hoax. Right? So was Yeshua alone? No, you've heard of this guy, Buddha. Well, what did he do? Well, he convinced millions, actually tens of millions of people, that he had the inside scoop on suffering. And he gave a lot of instruction on how to avoid suffering. So Buddha is quite popular. And I think you have your own list of candidates. No, believe me. Oh no, come over here to our church. We worship Buddha. Oh no, we don't worship Buddha, but we sort of worship something about Buddha. Well, what about Jesus? Same thing. What about Muhammad? Same thing. Same old story. Same old carnival act. Richard Dawkins is always there to convince you you're being taken to the cleaners. They're lying to you. You need to give up. You need to serve Satan. Satan is the winner. No Buddha. No, none of that. No heaven. No solution. Death. That's it. Death. And that's where you're at. And you can't get out, and nothing can save you. So why am I telling you all this? Because I'm writing a formal paper, and then I will write a book with the title Synthetic Idealism. This that you're listening to is a documentary of that process. We are currently at the cutting edge of science, studying consciousness according to the new framework for studying consciousness or anything, my new geometry, which solves the problem of consciousness. The so-called hard problem of consciousness, I've solved that. I've also solved the problem of quantum gravity. I've also solved the problem of the collapse of the wave function. I've solved the problem of entanglement. I've solved many vexing questions that are still plaguing electrodynamics, quantum dynamics, and cosmodynamics. I literally have all the answers, and I can save the children from calculus, which is a fate worse than death, and I have all the answers for humanity. To save the race, to save you, your family, everyone you know, I have all the answers. In physics, in science, and in the humanities. And I am the foremost expert on religion on the face of the earth right now. That's why I'm writing a formal paper to show you how I discovered all this in logical form, to present to you what I've known since the age of 17 about the everlasting covenant and the truth of why humans are on earth. The truth about Satan, the truth about Israel, the truth about everything that's baffled you and makes you suicidal and actually psychopathic. You're an idiot, you're a retard, that's where we all begin. And there's only one thing to do, but you have to do it exactly right, and that's called you're going to submit to God. And you will, or you're going to hell. And that's what every religious leader of any merit has said since the very first prophet, Enoch, Hanoch, Idris in Arabic. The very first prophet declared what has come true about the good news that can set you free. It's real. It's much more real than anything you've ever heard about Satan or governments or politics or religion. It's the truth. It can be proved. I proved it. Yeshua is the Messiah, and he is going to return. And it's going to be horrendous. And you won't be able to comprehend it or benefit from it unless you find the right guidance. Without that, you're doomed to be a servant of Satan. That's why I'm here. Good luck. I don't believe in luck. I say that to curse you. And I pronounce a curse upon you if you refuse to listen to me. May that curse fall upon you. That's why I'm here. You're going to listen to me, or you're going to die without hope. And there's no other man on the face of the earth that can lead you back to the light. Only I can. So you'd better start listening to me now. That's why I'm writing the paper. That's why I'm writing the book. That's why I'm making this documentary. That's why I'm talking about consciousness and reality. Keep looking up. We'll be right back. Thank you so much.